They told you success was about hard work, about goals, about having a plan. But what if I told you that none of that matters? If your mind is infected by one single, invisible habit, you can read all the books, meditate every morning, hustle harder than anyone, and still end up stuck, broke, lost, and doubting yourself, simply because of one thought pattern you don't even know you have. This isn't laziness. It's not fear. It's worse. It's a mental reflex that feels logical, but secretly destroys your future. Napoleon Hill spent decades studying the most powerful minds in history, and he discovered that this one habit was the silent assassin of success. And the scary part? The smarter you are, the more likely you are to fall into it. But once you see it, once you name it, you can kill it, fast. In the next few minutes, you're going to understand what this hidden habit is, where it comes from, how it rewires your brain, and how to completely reverse it using the same tools that built empires. This could be the most important mindset shift of your entire life. There's a mental habit that kills dreams quietly. It doesn't scream, knock, or introduce itself. But over time, it sabotages goals, paralyzes decisions, and drags human potential into oblivion. It's not failure. It's fear disguised as caution. Napoleon Hill identified it as one of the most dangerous enemies of success. It slips into your thoughts like fog, and by the time you notice, you're already lost inside it. This habit often shows up as constant doubt, that inner voice saying, "What if it doesn't work?" Or worse, "What if it does work, and you can't handle it?" The rational mind claps, thinking it's being wise. But in truth, it's the subconscious mind sabotaging your success. This form of negative thinking wears a mask of logic, so it won't be kicked out. And like any great actor, it fools the main character of the story, you. Over time, this thought pattern becomes the background noise of your identity. You stop noticing how small your thinking has become. Not because you're lazy, but because you're overprotecting yourself. The subconscious mind, wired to avoid pain, prefers repetition over evolution. And that's how success blockers take root. You don't see the prison bars because they're made of thoughts. The trap is sneaky. You feel like you're thinking, planning, analyzing. But in truth, you're just spinning your wheels. Hill called this overcaution, an invisible hand that chokes your momentum. And eventually, you start to wear that mindset like a badge of honor, mistaking it for wisdom. But wisdom without action is just fear with a PhD. You can spot this habit in people everywhere. The aspiring entrepreneur who keeps waiting for the right time. The artist who never shares their work because it's not perfect yet. The student who doesn't apply for the job because they still need to learn more. All of them are trapped in invisible habits that feel safe, but kill momentum. This mental habit rarely has a name in self-help books. It lives between the lines of your inner dialogue, like a corrupted mental program. And the longer it runs in the background, the stronger it gets. But here's the real danger. It never comes alone. Because as Napoleon Hill warned, doubt invites procrastination. And that combo? It's deadly. But this is just the beginning. Napoleon Hill didn't point fingers at the economy, the government, or bad luck. He went deeper. He said the real enemies of success are mental. Invisible forces that take shape as fear, doubt, hesitation, and procrastination. You don't see them, but you feel their weight every time you think about doing something bold and then don't. Hill described fear not as an emotion, but as a habitual state. A looping thought pattern that paralyzes action. The fear of criticism, the fear of poverty, the fear of failure. These fears nest quietly in your subconscious mind, disguising themselves as realistic thinking. But in reality, they're leftovers, mental habits inherited from a society built on survival, not creation. Procrastination is the child of doubt, and doubt is the shadow of fear. Hill was clear. When these forces control your mental habits, you're not making decisions, you're reacting to fear. You might think you're in control, but you're being led by invisible habits that block success, creativity, and growth. They don't just slow you down, they rewire your entire identity. The comparison trap plays right into this. Every scroll through social media becomes ammunition for self-sabotage. You see others succeeding and think, why am I so far behind? But that voice isn't really yours. It's the voice of internalized fear, of a mind programmed by society to feel less so it never tries to be more. He'll believe that the subconscious mind absorbs these ideas like a sponge. From childhood, we're taught to be careful, to play it safe, to not dream too big. And before we know it, we've built a mental cage. But unlike a real prison, this one has no bars, just beliefs. And those are much harder to break because we mistake them for truth. But if the enemies of success live in your mind, the battlefield must be internal. This is where personal development begins, not with hacks or habits, but with awareness. Once you see the invisible habits running your life, you can begin to change them. And that's where things start to get dangerous for your excuses. At first, it's just a thought, a hesitation, a moment of doubt. You ignore it, but then it shows up again and again, until that single moment becomes a pattern, and that pattern becomes a loop. Before you even notice, that loop has turned into your identity. You're no longer someone who doubts sometimes. You've become someone who never feels ready. This is where it gets dangerous, because now you're not just facing a habit, you're defending it. You say things like, I'm just not that confident, or I've always been like this. That's not personality. That's programming. The thought patterns you repeat, day after day, carve deep grooves in your subconscious mind. And eventually, those grooves become who you think you are. Napoleon Hill warned about this mental drift. When we stop challenging our thoughts, they harden into beliefs. And once that happens, you no longer see them as optional. You defend them. You wrap your identity around them. You reject anything that threatens them, even if it's the very change you need to succeed. This is the real danger of invisible habits. They hide behind your sense of self, and they steal your potential silently. It's not just about missing opportunities. It's about becoming someone you were never meant to be. Someone smaller, safer, less alive. You trade power for comfort, and you don't even realize it's happening. And the longer the loop runs, the harder it is to notice. Like water dripping on stone, these habits shape your mind in slow motion. You might look back after years and ask, why haven't things changed? The answer is simple, because your identity hasn't. And the mind protects identity more than anything else, even if it's broken. But once you see the loop, you can begin to break it. Not all at once, but crack by crack. The next thought, the next action, the next belief, you can choose differently. And that's when the loop starts to dissolve. But to do that, you'll need to understand something deeper. Why your brain wants to stay stuck in the first place. Here's the trap nobody talks about. Staying stuck feels good. Not consciously, of course, but deep in your brain, excuses come with a reward. Every time you rationalize why you're not ready, your brain gives you a hit of dopamine. That's the same chemical released when you eat sugar, scroll social media, or win a video game. It creates pleasure for doing nothing. This is how invisible habits hijack your biology. You think you're avoiding failure, but what you're actually doing is feeding your nervous system a drug it's come to crave. The longer you stay in comfort, the more your brain wires itself to avoid discomfort at all costs. You become addicted to safety, to familiarity, to the illusion of control. And it's dangerous because it feels smart. You tell yourself things like, I need more time, or I'll start when I feel more confident. Sounds reasonable, right? But it's not logic. It's neurochemistry. It's the reward system of the brain rewarding stasis, even if it's killing your potential. Napoleon Hill called this the hypnotic rhythm. Your mind gets lulled into cycles that feel safe but lead nowhere. This is why people stay in toxic jobs, relationships, or patterns for years. Because breaking out requires pain before reward. The new path doesn't offer dopamine immediately. It offers doubt, effort, vulnerability. And if your brain has been trained to avoid those signals, it will sabotage you with perfectly reasonable excuses. Want proof? Just think of that one project you've been delaying for months. The one you say you want to do. Writing the book, starting the business, having the hard conversation. Every time you avoid it, there's a tiny sense of relief, like you dodged something. That relief is dopamine, and it's reinforcing the loop that's keeping you stuck. To escape this trap, you need to rewire the reward. You have to teach your brain to associate small risks with progress. Celebrate the act of showing up, not just the result. And that shift, although uncomfortable, can start to free you from the chemical chains of mental habits. But one of those chains is far more subtle and far more dangerous: comparison. You open your phone. Within 5 seconds, someone's on a beach, someone else just bought a new car, and another is hustling. At 5 a.m., welcome to the mental habit that's slowly draining your power. Constant comparison. It's not just a bad idea, it's a virus. And it infects your subconscious mind so subtly, you barely notice it happening. Napoleon Hill warned that negative thinking and self-sabotage often come disguised as awareness. But there's a thin line between staying informed and measuring your value by someone else's timeline. This habit is one of the greatest success blockers in modern personal development. You're not failing, you're just being poisoned by a distorted metric system. Comparison alters your thought patterns. It reshapes what you think you want. It whispers, "Look how far behind you are." And suddenly, your unique path doesn't feel enough. You chase goals that were never yours. You feel anxiety over things that shouldn't even matter to you. You stop asking, "What do I want?" and start asking, "What will make me look better?" It's ironic, because the people you compare yourself to, they're likely doing the same. It's a house of mirrors. Nobody's living the full picture they post. But comparison doesn't care about truth. It hijacks the performance psychology of your mind. It floods your system with stress hormones and disrupts your creative flow. And worst of all, it teaches your brain that you're never enough, unless you catch up. To break this pattern, you have to realign with your internal compass. Track your progress. Measure from your past. One powerful technique: keep a self-evidence journal, a place where you write down weekly wins, no matter how small. These aren't for social media. They're for you. And this rewires your brain to recognize value internally, not externally. But comparison has another dark side. It doesn't just drain your confidence. It clogs the very channel through which intuition, action, and original thought can flow. And that is where the real sabotage begins. Most people believe intelligence is about logic, but real genius, true intuitive brilliance, emerges from silence. It's the sudden knowing, the flash of insight, the gut feeling that bypasses rational thought. This subtle force only operates when the mind is still. But the mental habit we're exploring, whether it's doubt, fear, or overthinking, creates too much internal noise. And genius, when ignored, becomes a faint whisper lost in the static. Napoleon Hill called the brain a broadcasting and receiving station. He wasn't being metaphorical, he meant it literally. Ideas, he said, come from a higher source of intelligence that only responds to faith and clarity. But this habit clouds the channel. It fills the space with hesitation, insecurity, and the need for validation. You can't download inspiration if the bandwidth is already taken by fear. This mental pattern is deceptive. It makes you feel smart for analyzing every angle. It convinces you that you're being rational when you're actually just afraid. You hesitate, wait, and stall, all in the name of being careful. Meanwhile, action slips through your fingers. In time, this becomes a new identity: the thinker, the planner, the almost doer. Worse, your body learns it too. Every time you avoid taking action, you reinforce a neurochemical loop. The brain rewards inaction with safety. Dopamine doesn't just come from success, it comes from avoiding perceived danger. So your nervous system becomes addicted to not moving. Paralysis becomes pleasure. The cycle deepens. Eventually, even your instincts go quiet. You lose the ability to trust yourself. You feel disconnected from purpose, unsure of your voice, your ideas, your next step. It's like standing in front of a locked door, knowing there's something important behind it, but having no key. And what's worse, you don't even try to knock anymore. That's the cost of a silenced inner world. To break this, you must practice listening. Not to others, but to yourself. That means stillness. That means making space for thoughts that don't come from fear. Whether it's journaling, solitude, or meditation, the goal is simple. Reconnect with the part of you that knows. Because when that voice is finally heard, everything changes. You weren't born second-guessing yourself. You learned it. This mental habit, this loop of hesitation and self-doubt, has roots deeper than you think. It's not just a quirk of your personality. It's a result of years of psychological conditioning. And like any program, it started early, long before you could understand what was happening. The mind is fertile soil, and childhood is when the seeds are planted. From a young age, we're taught to seek approval. We're praised for obedience, not originality. Creativity is replaced by conformity. Be realistic, they say. Don't be too ambitious. Over time, those voices become internalized. You no longer need someone else to stop you. You've learned to stop yourself. The school system amplifies it. Standardized tests tell you what intelligence should look like. Mistakes are punished, not explored. You learn to suppress curiosity in favor of the right answer. Risk is dangerous. Questioning is rebellious. And slowly, a fear-based identity forms. You begin to value safety over expression, results over exploration. But it doesn't stop there. Society continues the programming through media, culture, and comparison. You're bombarded with curated perfection, people achieving, winning, shining. And subconsciously, you start to believe you're behind. You compare your doubts to their confidence, your fears to their success. The virus spreads silently, coding your worth through external lenses. Even family systems can feed the loop. Parents, often unknowingly, pass down their fears. Be careful. That's not realistic. What if you fail? These aren't just words, they're emotional blueprints. And they shape your internal dialogue for decades. Soon, every dream must pass through a gate of doubt before it's allowed to breathe. But here's the truth. What was installed can be rewritten. Neuroplasticity is real. Your mind is malleable. Awareness is the first tool. The moment you recognize the program, you gain power over it. And with enough repetition, belief, and conscious reprogramming, you can uninstall the fear and rebuild a mind that believes in itself. It doesn't scream. It doesn't break down your door. This mental habit moves in silence, slowly draining your life force while you keep scrolling, doubting, delaying. Time is its first victim. You think you have years ahead, but it robs you one decision at a time. The dreams you shelved, they fade. The ideas you never acted on, forgotten. And all that's left is a version of you that could have been. Opportunity doesn't knock twice. But when you're trapped in this habit, you don't even hear it the first time. You rationalize. You hesitate. You wait for a better moment that never comes. And while you're analyzing, someone else is acting. The world moves forward without you. And slowly, regret replaces momentum. But the deepest theft isn't external. It's the erosion of vision. That fire you once had, it dims. You stop imagining bold futures. You stop believing you're capable of greatness. The mind once designed to dream becomes a cage of limitations. You no longer ask what's possible. You ask what's safe. And in that shift, your spirit begins to shrink. Purpose also decays in silence. When you don't take action, you drift. Days blend into weeks. You chase distractions, not meaning. And the sad truth? Many people die long before their heart stops beating. They live lives of quiet desperation, not because they lack talent, but because they surrendered to this mental virus too early. Even your relationships pay the price. You doubt your worth, so you overcompensate. Or you pull back, or you compare. You lose depth. You lose connection. Because you can't show up fully when you're stuck in self-judgment. The habit doesn't just rob you, it robs the world of the real you. And here's the tragedy, it all happens slowly. So slowly that you don't notice until years have passed. You wake up one day wondering where the time went, where the confidence went, where you went. But by then the damage is deep. That's why awareness isn't optional, it's urgent. Because the longer this habit runs your life, the more life it quietly takes away. Napoleon Hill didn't just diagnose the problem, he gave us the cure. He knew this habit couldn't be defeated with willpower alone. You needed a strategy, a system, a mental antidote. And it begins with one powerful idea, definiteness of purpose. When you have a clear why, doubt weakens. The fog lifts. You start acting from vision, not fear. Hill's second tool, autosuggestion. Speak what you want into your subconscious, daily, deliberately, with emotion. Most people let their inner voice run wild. But with repetition, you can rewire it. Replace hesitation with conviction. Replace, I'm not ready, with it's already mine. Thoughts become beliefs. Beliefs become behavior. That's how internal reality becomes external results. Another pillar is faith, not religious, but psychological. Faith in your capacity. Faith in the unseen. Faith that action leads to answers. Fear and faith can't occupy the same mind. One pushes forward, the other holds back. Hill taught that when faith is backed by emotion, it becomes unstoppable. It fuels persistence. It crushes doubt. But no one transforms alone. That's why Hill introduced the mastermind principle. Surround yourself with people who believe, who stretch, who demand more from life. Doubt thrives in isolation. Confidence thrives in community. A powerful circle upgrades your thinking, challenges your limits, and holds your vision when you forget it. And finally, decision. Fast, firm, aligned. Hill believed indecision was one of the greatest weaknesses of unsuccessful people. When you train your mind to decide, you train your identity to lead. Action becomes natural. Fear becomes noise. Life becomes momentum. You stop reacting and start creating. These aren't motivational cliches. They're mental weapons. Hill built a blueprint for mental freedom, forged in the fire of experience and observation. And if you use them daily, consciously, relentlessly, the old pattern breaks. The habit dies, and the version of you that was waiting finally wakes up. So now you know the truth. One mental habit, subtle, invisible, socially accepted, could be the very thing holding your life back. But here's the question. Now that you see it, what will you do about it? Will you keep letting fear dress itself as logic? Will you keep overthinking instead of acting? Or will today be the day you take control of your inner world and finally break the loop? Because success doesn't start with strategy. It starts with mental clarity. It starts with noticing the voice that talks you out of your own potential and choosing to silence it permanently. So, what's one belief you're going to kill today? What's one action you've been delaying for too long? Comment below. I want to know. And if this video woke something up in you, if you want to keep upgrading your mind, then subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Because this is just the beginning.